Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to another episode of the Tigers Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Schulte, and let's get right down to it. This episode being recorded on Sunday, July 28th, 2024, and that means that it is almost time for the trade deadline to have been come and gone. When we next convene on possibly next Sunday, maybe next Monday, depending on how things shake out. The trade deadline will have come and gone. So let's get down to it. There is some breaking news involving the Tigers and a trade. But before we get to that, let's get to the injury report because there's some bad news, but some good news at the same time. The bad news is that Riley Greene, as of Friday, was put on the 10-day injured list with a hamstring strain. It is the most mild hamstring strain. It is, as he says, he just felt something. He didn't feel anything pop. It just hurt. And so he went and got it looked at. And it's a grade 1. If it's a grade 1, it is a very mild grade 1 strain. Which is good because that means that he doesn't really have a lot to do in rehab. So he'll be back probably the end of August. Now, I'm saying that in an optimistic sense because you got to go through what you need to do to get the injury healed. Then you got to go through a running progression. Then you got to go through a hitting progression and throwing and running and hitting and throwing and doing all the baseball activities. Then you got to go through a rehab assignment. So my guess is 10 days from Friday is Monday the 5th. If he's feeling better at that point, if the scans show that the strain has healed, he'll start a running progression. That'll be about 7 days. My guess is, and then he'll do other baseball activities in that point in time. So he'll probably show up at Toledo for his rehab assignment, probably around the 15th or 16th of August. My guess is anywhere between the 18th and the 21st of August is when he'll come back. And I'm saying this based on what Parker Meadows went through. Remember, he got placed on the 10-day injured list for a hamstring strain on the 15th of July. Sorry, the 14th of July. And he may be back this weekend. This is the good news. The good news is that he was on a rehab assignment, started a rehab assignment today in Toledo. He DH'd for the Mud Hens today in their 10-5 win over Louisville. He'll DH again on Tuesday. He'll play some center field on Wednesday. They'll see how it looks on Thursday. So which my guess is because they go on Toledo goes on the road Tuesday. Well, they're probably heading down to wherever it is that they're going to play today, if not tomorrow. So they're on the road this week. My guess is that he will get evaluated in Detroit on Thursday. They'll activate him on Friday, just in time for Kansas City. And Cole Reagans. He probably won't face Cole Reagans, but you never know, depending on what the lineup looks like, depending on what the trade deadline yields. There's also good news on Kerry Carpenter. He is probably going to go out on a rehab assignment this week as well. If not next week, he's doing well in his baseball activities. He's been working out, running the bases, swinging the bat, throwing the baseball, doing all the things. So we'll see how that goes. Now, the news on the trade deadline front. First and foremost, if you think Tarik Skubal's getting traded, unless it's Baltimore or the Dodgers, don't expect it to happen. And the only way it happens if it's Baltimore or the Dodgers is if the Dodgers are willing to part with somebody like, say, Gavin Stone and, a number of their top AAA prospects that are right there ready to crack through, possibly a Gavin Lux, although Lux isn't hitting very well this year. But James Outman possibly. I don't think so though, because he's a left-handed outfielder. But you better come correct if you're the Dodgers, and if you're the Orioles, you better throw Kobe Mayo, Jackson Holiday, and Vasaya, I think is the guy's name. He's a catcher in Double-A. You better be willing to throw those guys in a package, as well as a starter. Because right now Detroit only has 3 healthy starters, and Skubal's one of them. Pitched yesterday, struck out 10, gave up 2 runs, walked 2. But he was still his dominant usual self. Now, on top of that, Carson Kelly has been traded to Texas for a Double-A catcher and a Double-A reliever. Now, the good news about the Double-A catcher is he's left-handed, and he's played a little first base. And I say that because, look, Spencer Torkelson, you don't know what you're going to get with him anymore. I almost think that 2022 was what he is and not 2023. But we'll see. But yeah, left-handed catcher and a Double-A reliever. The Double-A reliever has more than a strikeout an inning. And the Double-A catcher is doing okay. Has these decent OPS numbers, and throws out about 25% of attempted base stealers. He's thrown out 10 of 42 attempts. 10 run. He's caught 10 base runners in 42 attempts. That's right about 40. Right about 20%, 25%. So that's the catcher that they got in exchange for Carson Kelly, who is now a Texas Ranger. And that allows Dylan Dingler to come up. And you know what? Scott Harris basically said, look, our young players are going to play. And, $3.5 million on an option year for Carson Kelly that the club picked up. And he's a free agent after this year. So, it's a rental, but he might stay in Texas. Look, why not? It's defending world champs. And they're committed to win, and you get the chance to catch Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer. Although I think Scherzer might retire at the end of this year, but you never know. It's a good fit for him, and you know what? We're done with Texas, so live long and prosper, sir. We're also done with Minnesota, and courtesy of today's 5-0 shutout loss at the hands of the Minnesota Twins, courtesy of Bailey Ober. We lost the season series 7-6. Now, we had a chance to win that season series on Friday, and we got absolutely bombed 9-3. Kader Montero got lit up, went 5 innings, gave up quite a few runs, and Joey Wentz then came in and crapped the bed, as he usually does lately. I just don't trust Joey Wentz when he's got the baseball in his hands. If anybody needs to get traded at the deadline, it's him, because they're out of options for him. But you know what? Send him to the Dodgers for a bag of baseballs. Throw Javi Baez in there with him. Oh, well, Javi Baez has hit 3 home runs over the last 4 games. Yeah. He also swung at a slider in the on-deck circle today. So there you go. And look, the Dodgers could absorb his contract. He's perfect for LA. He really is, because he can hit 9th. They can pay the contract that he still owed. You can move Mookie Betts back to second base when he comes back. They've got the offense to surround Javi Baez to where he doesn't have any pressure on him. He's perfect in LA. They're not going to do that, but I don't have a direct line to Scott Harris. And I don't have a direct line to Andrew Friedman either. If I did, I'd let them both know, hey, look, this is the trade you need to make. And this is what you should do. So there you go. Casey Mize, by the way, threw a bullpen session last week. He'll throw another one this week. And he said he felt good through 25 pitches in his bullpen session. So he may be out on a rehab assignment after this week, which will be good. That's someplace I forgot to go in the injury report. But look, Jack Flaherty, Mark Canha, both trade deadline candidates, trade candidates. I would hope that if you trade one of those two guys, Gio Urshela as well, he's on a 1-year deal, but he's not playing very well. But I would hope that if you trade one of those guys, you get a starting pitcher back, even if it's a fourth or fifth starter. Detroit needs starting pitching so badly right now because of the injuries that they have. Doesn't even have to be controllable. Just has to be a starting pitcher to get him through. Brant Hurter's inconsistent. Ty Madden's inconsistent down in Toledo, or either one or both of them would be up right now. Matt Manning is hurt in Toledo, or he'd be up right now. And you're not going to see Jackson Jobe this year. Scott Harris has ruled that out. It is not going to happen. And you know what? I don't blame him. Nothing against Jackson Jobe, but you're 21 years old and you're still in AA because of injuries and whatnot. But the point I'm making is you're 21 years old. You're a bit young to be starting in the major leagues. Now, Rick Porcello was 19 when he started for the Tigers back in 2008. But it was a different time back then. There wasn't as much data out there as there is now. So it was a lot easier for a guy to go through a lineup a little bit. The league would have had the league sees him, but it took a lot longer for stuff to get around in 2008 than it does in 2024. So that's a thing. So Detroit loses the season series to Minnesota. Detroit's got 2 more against Cleveland. Let's take a quick look at who Detroit is done with and who Detroit has still to play home and road. So Detroit's done with Cleveland after Tuesday. They're done with Minnesota after Tuesday. They're done with the entire National League East after Tuesday. They're done with the entire National League East. They're done with the Blue Jays. They're done with the Dodgers. Of course, they're done with Minnesota. And they've played well against these guys. They're done with they've still got the entire with minus the Blue Jays. They've got the entire American League East coming up at home, and one on the road against Baltimore. They've got Kansas City home and home. They've got Chicago, the White Sox home and home. They've got a away series against the Cubs. That will finish off the National League Central. They're done with Houston. They're done with Texas. They've still got the Angels at home. They've got the A's on the road. They got the Mariners home and away. They've got the Padres on the road. They've got the Giants on the road, and then they'll be done with the National League West. Like I said, they've got home and home with the Chicago White Sox and with the Kansas City Royals. So it's coming down to this whole thing is almost done. This season is almost done. It's now is when you have to make moves. Now is when you have to be playing your best. And now that Riley Green is not there, I don't know how good their best is going to be. I was saying last week that this team is going to make the playoffs. I kind of doubt it now because Riley Green is that important to that offense. Unless Colt Keith can step up, unless Kerry Carpenter can come back before Riley Green does, and put a stabling hand on that lineup unless they get a good bat for Mark Canha. I don't see this team making the playoffs right now. I just don't. Because this whole thing was predicated, when I started the season off, this whole thing was predicated on Carpenter, Torkelson, and Green all hitting 20 to 25 home runs, Rogers hitting 20 to 25 home runs, Colt Keith being better than what he is, but not by much, Riley Green staying healthy, and the pitching being healthy. And it just hasn't worked out that way. It really hasn't. So, as of this moment, this team is not going to make the playoffs. They might as well just, throw out, get rid of their rentals and bring up the young guys. Get rid of their 1-year contracts and bring up the young guys. But you keep Skubal. You have to, unless you get, like I said, Jackson Holliday, Kobe Mayo, and Visaya from Baltimore. You keep Skubal. And you build around him. Get him a contract extension, dadgummit. I want to thank you all for checking me out on YouTube. Again, Spotify no longer has the podcast. I'm not distributing the podcast anymore. It's all through the YouTube channel because Spotify for podcasters is being a jerk. If you want to follow the show on Mastodon, you can at TB Podcast at tweescakes.social. That's TWEESE cake.social. I'm on Twitter at Podcast Tigers. I'm also available via email, tigersbaseballpodcast@gmail.com. It's the world's longest email address. I'm proud of that. Trade deadline on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Detroit has an off day on Wednesday. We'll see where things go after that. Till next week, folks, I'm Chris Schulte. Thanks for listening. Go Tigers.